Hello, my name is Jean Nelson. We at UUCTS offer a warm welcome to all who are joining us today. Whether this is your first time or your 101st time, we are glad you are here. Anyone who has ever attended a Sunday morning service at our location at 230 Grand Boulevard in Tarpon Springs knows you can hardly make it to your seat without being greeted about half a dozen people who are really happy to see you. We feel the same way now. Our doors may be closed, but our arms are wide open. During these times of social distancing, and with all that's happening in the world around us, being part of a warm and caring community can make all the difference. We'd love to get to know you better. To learn more about Unitarian Universalism and find out how to get involved, please visit our website at uutarpon.org and request to be on our mailing list. Visitors and guests are invited to attend all of our activities. We will now begin our service. We light our chalice for fathers and for fatherhood by Peter Friedrich. For sleepless nights awaiting the curfew breakers, for anxious hours as a driving instructor, for hours spent on sidelines, cheering and watching school plays, sometimes resting our eyes, for the pressures of breadwinning and wait until your father gets home, for teaching moments and mentoring moments, for making up answers when you just don't know, but are expected to because you know everything, for scrapes and boo-boo kisses and Band-Aids, for hugs and kisses and silliness and play, for bedtime stories and early morning nice time, for all the aftershave and ties received as gifts, for handing over car keys and waves goodbye, for father-daughter wedding dances, and cradling grandchildren for the first time, for all the moments and all the meaning in the role of a lifetime. We light our chalice for fathers and for fatherhood.
And now, Reverend Jim will give us a story for all ages.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's another one of those Shel Silverstein poems, a nice one for Father's Day. It's called Smart. My dad gave me $1 bill because I'm his smartest son, and I swapped it for 2 shiny quarters because 2 is more than 1. And then I took the quarters and traded them to Lou for 3 dimes. I guess he don't know that 3 is more than 2. Just then along came old blind Bates, and just because he can't see, he gave me 4 nickels for my 3 dimes. And 4 is more than 3. And I took the nickels to Hiram Coombs down at the seed feed store, and the fool gave me 5 pennies for them, and 5 is more than 4. Then I went and showed my dad, and he got red in the cheeks and closed his eyes and shook his head, too proud of me to speak. So ends the story. Bonnie.
Why don't you tell me a story about when you were a kid, Dad? Did you ever get in trouble for anything that you did? Did you have a lot of homework? Did you ever have any fun, Dad? Why don't you tell me a story? Make it a really good one. We'll now have some words of wisdom from Reverend Jim.
Thank you, Bonnie. This is a reading from Jessica Starr Rockers. It's called The Hands of Our Fathers. She writes, every Sunday morning growing up, my father would take us to Mass at St. Peter's Catholic Church. I loved the hymns and the smells and bells, as they say, but the sermons were kind of a bore. So I would occupy myself by counting the cuts and scrapes and bruises on my father's hands. My dad was an electrician and a farmer, working with his hands from before the sun came up until long after it went down. So every week, I would take his large hands in my little ones, turning them over, examining, discovering new bruises, and keeping track of the healing of the old ones. I would count the wounds and whisper the tally in his ear. I loved that he let me hold and investigate his hands in this way, snuggled up next to him in the pew, in the quiet of the church with just the priest's voice in the background. Having two jobs that demanded his attention, my dad didn't always have time for such intimacies, except on Sunday morning. And I took pride in those wounds. It was evidence of how hard my dad worked to take care of his family. He was a man who was often uncomfortable with expressing affection, but I would see in those hands how much he loved me. Was my dad a good dad? Was he there for me when I needed him? Did he protect me and provide for me? Did he care about me? When I ask these questions, I think of his hands. Let us today honor the hands of our fathers for all the ways and all the hard work that they do to show that we are loved. Let us enter together into a moment of silence. And amen. Bonnie?
Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. The offering for the work and welfare of our church will now be given and received. Please go to our website, uutarpon.org, and click on the donate button, or send your check to 57 Reed Street. The entire address is there on your screen. Thank you. My special music today is another song by Joe Jenks, a singer-songwriter that tours a lot and visits many, many Unitarian Universalist churches. And this is a song he wrote years ago called Men Are Good. Men are good, men are good, though it seems that they are very often quite misunderstood. Men are good, they are not bad. So please let go of any misconceptions that you've had. Men are good, men are good, men are good. Men are kind, men are kind. They have gentle, loving hearts and creative thinking minds. Men are kind, they are not mean. In spite of all the television images you've seen, men are kind, men are kind, men are kind. Men need rest, men need rest. They are brought up to believe they are disposable at best. Men need rest, they work too hard. And a day away from work does not mean working in the yard. Men need rest, men need rest, men need rest. Men should play, men should play. Men should have a right to have a little fun with every day. Men should play, well, it's okay. I've heard God even took a break on the seventh day. Men should play, men should play, men should play. Men love peace, men love peace, and they wish that all that crazy macho Rambo stuff would cease. Men love peace, men hate war, and I'm here to tell you they will not be fighting anymore. Men love peace, men love peace, men love peace. Men are great, men are great, whether changing stinky diapers or employed as heads of state. Men are great, the world around, from Tokyo to Mozambique and tiny Russian towns. Men are great, men are great, men are great. Men are good, men are good, though it seems they often are quite misunderstood. Men are good, they are not bad. So please let go of any misconceptions that you've had. Men are good, men are good, men are good. Our message of the day comes from Reverend Jim.
Thank you, Bonnie. You did wonders for my self-esteem there. Hello. This message is a Father's Day message for 2020. Many years ago, my grandfather, my mother's father, bought a burial plot with 6 lots, room for 6 traditional casket burials in a cemetery in Battle Creek, Michigan. He intended it for himself and his wife, my grandmother, and their 2 daughters and their husbands. I'm sure Grandpa saw this acquisition as part of his fatherly responsibility, a resting place for his entire immediate family. Grandpa was the first to pass on, but Grandma started a little trouble when she decided Grandpa required 2 of the cemetery lots for his casket. I'm not sure how this worked exactly, but I remember my mother was worried about whether there would be room for everyone when the time came. Then she learned that cremated remains required only half a lot, so she felt better. She and my father had already decided to be cremated. They were Unitarians, and cremation has long been common in our tradition. So after Grandpa died, Grandma was the next to be buried there. I had been overseas when Grandpa died, so I was unable to attend his burial. I did attend Grandma's interment, again a traditional casket burial. Then my father passed in 1986, and I traveled to Battle Creek once again. Then my uncle passed, followed by my mother in 2013 at age 93. Finally, my aunt, my mother's younger sister, passed in 2017 at age 94. The family plot is now filled. All the markers are in place. And sadly, I now have no compelling reason ever to revisit Battle Creek, where I had spent so many summer vacations fishing with my dad and other things, where my parents both grew up. That part of my life is done. Yet I shall not forget that there are 3 fathers interred in that family plot. My grandfather, father of 2, and grandfather of 5. My father, father of 2 and grandfather of 4. My uncle, father of 3 and grandfather of 3. Given that grandfathers often do a fair share amount of fathering, there was certainly a significant amount of nurturing undertaken by these 3 men. They were unrelated to each other, and yet they shared some purpose in life. You see, one of the tasks that parents share is to prepare their offspring for their unfolding lives. Fathers and mothers pave the way for the next generation. And yes, some fathers and mothers are better at fulfilling this task than others. The 3 men resting in that plot performed this task reasonably well. All of their children have fared successfully, more or less. Personally, I was closest to my own father, with my grandfather a somewhat less influential father figure. I saw my uncle in his fathering role as mostly positive, though he was a little more authoritative than my dad. Now they are all gone, and it is unlikely that I will return to where they rest. But of course, their fathering lives on in me, in my brother, and in our cousins, not to mention our offspring. The Catholic Church's recognition of fathering dates to about year 1400 of the Common Era and St. Joseph's Day, celebrated in March. The civic celebration of Father's Day in this country did not begin until early in the 20th century, however. And as you might guess, it quickly became a largely hallmark holiday meant to complement Mother's Day. The initial American recognition of Father's Day was actually a somber event. In 1907, some 361 men died in the Monongah mining disaster in West Virginia. Of these, 250 deceased coal miners were fathers, and around 1,000 children were left fatherless. In 1908, a nearby Methodist church celebrated a Father's Day in memory of these lost fathers. At about the same time, Several other locales organized Father's Day celebrations, and just about all of them thought that they were the very first. Too bad there was no Facebook in those days or some other social media that could show definitively which observation was indeed first. Be that as it may, politicians waffled on making Father's Day in any way official until 1966, when President Lyndon Johnson issued a proclamation. Later, in 1972, President Richard Nixon signed a law that made Father's Day a holiday to be celebrated on the third Sunday in June. Yes, Nixon did some good things. But what is it that this holiday recognizes? What is fathering? What does fatherhood mean? I mentioned that the role of parenting is to prepare children to make their way in the world, to instill values and knowledge about life as we live it today. Many people, particularly older folks, would agree that men and women bring different skills to the nurturing task. You know, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, that mentality. The idea is that women supply nurturance that focuses inwardly on the family and on interpersonal, loving relationships. Men then supply nurturance that addresses dealing with or competing in the outside world. These days, it's about how to get ahead in economic endeavors. We can trace this division of labor in the realm of nurturance back to the earliest human communities, where physically stronger males went out to hunt while women stayed in the villages to tend to the cooking fires, nursed infants, and learned how to make beer. As physical strength has become less a determinant of socializing roles, technology has made intellect a more critical determinant of a person's ability to become successful in the world beyond the family. So nurturing roles, once relegated by gender, fathers' and mothers' jobs being quite different, have given way to what we might call fuzzier roles. By that, I mean the division of labor is less gender specific and more fluid than it was even just a couple of generations ago. I happened to cross a clip on YouTube, I think, from Leave It to Beaver, that quintessential all-white suburban family TV sitcom from the late 1950s. Wally, that's Beaver's older brother, and their dad are outside at the barbecue grill. Wally asks why his mom always does the inside cooking while Dad does all the outdoor cooking. Dad responds thoughtfully and predictably for the time, "A woman's place is in the home, so she might as well be in the kitchen. Besides," he goes on, "women need all kinds of labor-saving equipment," blenders and food processors, I suppose, "in order to do the work. Cooking outdoors is far more rustic, and men are better suited for this kind of work." We can only imagine how this affected Wally's view of gender roles as he entered adulthood. Now, just a couple of generations later, things are different, and gender stereotypes are breaking down at least a little bit. It's all about effective fathering and how we as men can nurture without the gender stereotypes of the Beaver generation and before. I need to point out that not all of us had effective, nurturing biological fathers, regardless of our generation. For some, the example set by our father may have been one that we sought not to follow because we saw it as unhealthy. For others, perhaps our biological fathers were not available to us for any one of a number of reasons. In this kind of instance, it is very likely that someone else in our life came to the fore. It might have been a step-parent, a grandfather, a brother, an uncle, a teacher, a friend, a spouse, or even our mother. Almost all of us have been fathered along the way, and we have set this day aside to recognize any and all such contributors. If these people are still with us, it's a good time to thank them for their fathering. If they are gone from us, then be sure to let their memory occupy your mind for a time today. May we all honor our fathers or those who have fathered us on this Father's Day. May it be so, and amen. Bonnie.
When I am frightened, will you lay assure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be there for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you be there for me, comfort me tenderly? Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love. We will now have some closing words, followed by the chalice extinguishing.
True, be well, be loving, by Cynthia Landrum. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our care for each other. Our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues until we are together again, friends. Be strong, be well, be true, be loving.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround